Bom dia a todos. Em nome da Portos dos Açores, obviamente, bem-vindos a todos ao arquipélago dos Açores, à ilha de São Miguel. Queria agradecer a presença da Excelentíssima Senhora Secretária Regional dos Transportes, Mobilidade e Infraestruturas por ter dado a continuidade a este projeto e a este evento de fazer a sua abertura. Dar as boas-vindas, obviamente, a todos os sócios e todos os parceiros que fazem parte do projeto Portos, com especial referência ao líder do projeto da Universidade do Porto, bem-vindo. Excelentíssimo Sr. Comandante da Zona Marítima dos Açores, bem-vindo. Excelentíssimos Srs. Presidentes da Atlantic Line e da Lota Açor, que fazem parte da nossa comunidade portuária, bem-vindos também. A todos os representantes da Direção Regional de Mobilidade, aqui representados pelo seu diretor, bem-vindos também. Caros palestrantes, caros convidados, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, a Portos dos Açores tem, a partir de hoje, mais um objetivo delineado que é claro. Nós tivemos 2 anos a resolver situações que vinham do passado, estamos empenhadíssimos, como todas as autoridades portuárias aqui presentes, em resolver o dia-a-dia, mas hoje também assumimos publicamente que nos importa muito o futuro e este evento traz-nos, sem dúvida, essa importância daquilo que queremos deixar para as próximas gerações. Nos portos que nós gerimos, e somos uma autoridade portuária muito particular, nós gerimos portos em 9 ilhas, com realidades completamente distintas, em que, dizia um professor que nos deu uma formação há cerca de um mês na Escola do Mar, em que importante não é ser grande, importante não é fazer muito, importante é tornar eficaz cada porto com as suas capacidades. E nós temos portos grandes, portos pequenos, todos eles longe da sua máxima eficácia, e é para isso que trabalhamos todos os dias. Este projeto, que começa em São Miguel e que é abrangido por 2 tipos de academias perfeitamente distintas e que hoje integramos aqui nesta comunidade, a Academia do Saber, que compõe várias universidades nacionais e internacionais, com a Academia do Fazer e do Executar no dia-a-dia, as autoridades portuárias, temos representantes dos nossos empreiteiros locais, da nossa comunidade local, nomeadamente do Lota Açor, da Atlantic Line, e o futuro passa, sem dúvida, pela descarbonização. É disso que nós vamos falar nos próximos dias. Trouxemos e temos connosco algumas das melhores referências a nível nacional e a nível internacional. Eu farei um pequeno resumo destas boas-vindas em inglês, porque temos representantes que só falam a língua inglesa, mas queria-vos deixar um salutar bem-vindo à Ilha de São Miguel, aos Açores, e tem sido um prazer trabalhar convosco no futuro e podem contar connosco para sempre com estes desenvolvimentos e com o compromisso na descarbonização para os nossos portos. A small resume for those who do not speak in Portuguese. Our warmest welcome to the Azores archipelago and especially to San Miguel Island. We are very honored to have you here. I'm sure all the contributions that will come from the English language will show us what's being done for the future, especially in the cruising lines, especially in the cruisers that pass through the Azores and in our archipelago. A lot of misfit ideas go out to the virtual world, but here we talk about the real world. We talk about the future. And this is where we want to be for the next 10 years, the next 20 years. So welcome very much for your presence here. I'm sure you will be very well welcome. And you'll have the best listeners in the arena for your disposal. Obrigado a todos. Eu terminarei passando a palavra à Sra. Secretária, que fará a abertura do evento. Temos muito orgulho em ter-vos cá connosco hoje. A Portos dos Açores é, sem dúvida, uma empresa que quer transcender aquilo que foi durante todos estes anos para ser algo muito melhor. Isto obriga a ser digital, isto obriga a ser menos carbónico, isto obriga a ser automático. Temos todos a noção disso, estamos empenhados em que o futuro seja melhor e contamos convosco. Obrigado. Thank you.
Muito bom dia a todos. Senhor Comandante da Zona Marítima dos Açores, Senhor Diretor Regional da Mobilidade, Senhor Presidente do Conselho de Administração da Portos dos Açores e restantes membros do Conselho de Administração, Sr. Presidente do Conselho de Administração da Atlantic Line, Sr. Presidente do Conselho de Administração, Senhora Presidente do Conselho de Administração da Lota Açor, dear partners of the Ports project, both university and port authorities, dear friends. Vão-me desculpar os portugueses, mas para facilitar esta minha intervenção inicial, fila em inglês, tendo a certeza de que todos compreenderão e assim facilita a vida aos nossos convidados que não falam português. So I must say that it's a great pleasure that and I greet you all on behalf of the government of the Azores. We are truly delighted to welcoming you to such an important event, especially to have you all in this discussion for our common future. In the Azores, we take sustainability very seriously, and we are deeply committed with these principles, working hard every day to assure its success. The Azores is the first archipelago in the world to be formally certified as a sustainable destination by EarthCheck, according to the Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria. On the last few years, tourism has been the most important sector of our economy, with no doubt. Its multiple effects and impacts on other sectors have been a great assets for wealth and job creation, as well for new opportunities and well-being in every single one of our 9 islands. Since nature tourism is the Azores star product, our commitment to sustainability has granted a very competitive position to the whole region as a tourist destination. In fact, this perfect synergy between beautiful nature and sustainability practices has probably been the most important competitive advantage in the post-pandemic recovery. In 2022, we had the best tourism year ever, breaking all the records in every traditional indicator. This means more job creation, more opportunities for businesses and investors, and more wealth for our economy. This success also includes cruise tourism, which is very important for overcoming seasonality in the Azores Islands. Last year, we were fortunate to welcome more cruise ships than any other year previously. But allow me to underline that the growth we are achieving in cruise tourism is part of a carefully designed strategy from our Port Administration Board, which is a member of CLI, as you probably know. We are targeting smaller and more sustainable ships based on expedition and adventure tourism. Because small ships means less passengers, but these passengers have a different profile and represent increased value added for local businesses and for the destination itself. We acknowledge that the cruise ship sector is among the frontline stakeholders investing in carbon neutrality, and therefore we believe that we can work together for new opportunities in the near future. As we see it, sustainability can only be achieved if everyone is involved and committed to it. And this means that we must have everyone on board, including big infrastructures like ports and cruise lines, of course, and many other sectors on this line. It's not new for any one of you that energy transition is today the greatest challenge we are facing in what regards sustainable development. We have to say that this is a global challenge that will have unpredictable effects in many years to come. It is a challenge that we may not neglect or ignore. It's a challenge that we must face with determination. In the Azores, we have been investing in renewable energy for several years now, and we have managed to leverage the best of our natural resources with the best of the available technology. Wind power, hydropower, and solar energy have been relevant, but we must say that geothermal energy is indeed the most important resource that significantly increases local energy production. Beyond renewable energy, we have been actively promoting electric mobility and energy efficiency through innovative incentives and programs. We are even developing projects to achieve self-sufficient islands in what regards energy production, for example, Graciosa and Flores. We understand that this is not an easy task, even though it's something that we are firmly believe in and are continuously working for. However, the energy transition process that is being led by European Commission outlines that the energy transition process that is being led by European Commission brings us, that means highlights, other concerns and challenges. The Fit for 55 package, for instance, is placing remote and small communities and tourism destinations like us, like Açores, before new problems. This includes laws, regulamentations regarding the emissions trading system, fuel EU maritime, and they feed alternative fuel infrastructure regulations. As a result, transport infrastructures are particularly ports, we need to be adapted to answer to the new EU requirements and the ship's energy needs. Since the Azores are 9 islands, this means, and this is really a different thing that we have to underline, this means multiple investments and a huge pressure on the regional financial resources. We are investing in adapting our ports to the best of our possibilities, aiming to respond adequately to energy transition as well to climate change. We are even preparing for new paradigms, including innovative energy system sources like hydrogen. We are also preparing a 25 million euros investment to new electric ships that will be used for passengers transport between the islands of Faial, Pico, and São Jorge. The future and the present, for all that matters, is very demanding, but I'm firmly convinced that the Azores are working hard and will be prepared for what will come. I therefore urge you to make the most of this event and collect positive conclusions and consequent actions and initiatives for our common future. This is a great opportunity on a decisive moment and on a perfect region, a sustainable leading archipelago, to discuss ports, carbon neutrality, and energy sufficiency. We are looking forward to hearing your ideas and plans for a better future. We want you on board this sustainability ship, and we want to sail with you towards a successful energy transition. Thank you very much. Muito obrigada a todos.
European Government Affairs and was promoted to his present position in 2020. Born and raised in Greece, he studied political science and international relations at the University of Macedonia in Greece, working in parallel for the UNESCO Chair for Intercultural Policy. Mr. Nikos Mertsanidis.
Hope you can hear me. Okay, yes. So, bon dia, Johnson. Thank you for coming here. I just have to. I realized a few stuff since I came to the Azores. One is the important work on energy and decarbonization that you are doing, also with this Interreg program. The other one, I was very glad to hear you talking about the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. CLIA partners a lot in many destinations with the GSTC, and also cruise lines have certified, are looking for certified ShoreX from GSTC. And we have, I think in total there must be more than 1,000 programs that have been certified, so it was really good. And also to realize, you know, as years go by, we don't really count the people we meet, but I just realized how many friends I have in the Azores, and I'm really happy about it. So, estou muito feliz de estar aqui, and this is probably where my Portuguese finish. If we switch, no, forward, backward, no. We'll do it with a little arrow here. Okay. So, I do believe that cruise is the most innovative part of the shipping industry and one of the most innovative ones in the travel and tourism industry. And I do hope that by the end of this presentation, we can more or less agree on that. Just to put things a little bit into perspective, there are 70,000 vessels registered in the IMO, and only 350 of them are cruise vessels, 280 mostly in CLIA members' fleet. In terms of emissions, the maritime world emissions are 3% of global emissions, and cruise is 4% of that. So it's a tiny fragment of the emissions of the shipping industry, whilst we carry roughly 30,000 passengers in 2019, and the same or more or less amount, hopefully doing better in 2023. And 7.7 million of those are in Europe. Just to give you the magnitude, ferries in Europe, so the big maritime transport brother of cruises, carry 120 million passengers in Europe every year. So that's how relatively small we are. But again, I'm really proud that we are probably the most innovative in the whole sector. No, this way. A little bit about CLIA. So CLIA represents 43 ocean-going cruise line members and 10 river cruise marketing affiliates. And we're proud that we represent 95% of the global capacity. So most of the ships that visit the Azores probably belong to a CLIA member. And we have nearly 300 executive partners. I'm particularly proud for the Port of Açores that became a member last year after the good cooperation we had. And I just want to highlight the increase that you see on lower berths actually means that the industry, even though we were hit very hard by the pandemic, kept investing in building those ships in European shipyards for most of it. So let's see a little bit more into the detail. There are 79 ships on order. There were from 2022 to 2028, 66 now, up on 2028. 47 billion euros in value, which means the technologies, the companies would work around the construction. Just to give you an idea, building a mid-sized ship requires more than 300 companies to work together because of all the equipment and the essentials that have to be installed on board. But the most important feature is that 93% of all the world's cruise ships are built in European shipyards. And on the other side, 80% of the order book of our shipyards in Europe are cruise ships. The message coming out of this is that if Europe wants to be at the global forefront as a global leader on maritime innovation, that includes also alternative fuels and alternative sources, we have to acknowledge that virtually the only thing we build is cruise ships. And that's where we need the investment to take place. Now, the cruise industry and the cruise ecosystem that involves all of you here has a good story to tell that is driven by facts, research, and progress against a commitment to pursue and achieve this net zero carbon cruising by 2050. So we must find ways to share our commitments and our progress with the communities and have a far more reach in our impact in everyday life. That's why we announced last year that we are on this path to sail to a better future. And that comes with two goals. The first one, short-term, two objectives: 40% reduction of rate of CO2 by 2030, and then eventually net zero carbon cruising by 2050. Some kind of core commitments that CLIA and its member lines have made for the sustainable future. So the first, as I said, is the commitment to pursue net zero carbon cruising by 2050 globally, not in Europe only. Second, and as an important part of this pursuit, we have committed that all CLIA memberships will be equipped to connect to shore-side electricity facilities wherever it is available in ports, and we'll see more about that later. And third, CLIA also joined the Global Maritime Forum call to action for shipping decarbonization. So again, although we are only a small portion of the maritime world, our ambition is actually to be a leader in the sector. In order to achieve that, there are three pillars. I consider them key for achieving sustainable cruising: is the reduction of vessels emissions and generally the environmental footprint of the sail, reducing the energy requirements on board and the environmental footprint of what we call hotel operations, so the whole area of accommodating guests on board, and obviously sustainable tourism practices in the destinations in terms of destination management, tourism flow management, and the technologies being used to achieve that. So let's have a look at where the ships stand in this whole system. It is small letters, but it just gives you a rough idea about the different technologies that might be applied on a ship. So exhaust gas cleaning systems to purify water on board, and a number of technologies to reduce the energy efficiency. Sorry, to increase the energy efficiency. Sorry for that. So a little bit about those technologies. CLIA Ocean-going cruise line members will continue always to make advancements with solutions that are already having a significant and positive impact, as the cruise sector takes a leading role in driving the development of sustainable marine fuels. Sustainable marine fuels being explored right now include a range of options such as biofuels or other advanced approaches, biosynthetic fuels, methanol, ammonia, hydrogen. We'll see a bit more about that. With every new ship comes more advanced technologies, greater efficiencies. And just to give you an example, cruise lines are deploying technologically advanced onboard systems to reduce waste and sort materials for recycling, with some cruise operators able to repurpose up to 100% of waste generated on board by removing, reusing, and recycling and converting to waste to energy. In addition, there are advanced wastewater treatment systems on board, which treat wastewater to a higher standard than in many coastal cities. And they are consistent with a clear policy that all our member cruise lines need to sign, reaching above and beyond international legal requirements. These systems are in place in 74% of the global cruise capacity and are being built into 100% of all cruise ships on order for delivery between now and 2028. In this path to net zero carbon cruising, there are intermediate short-term solutions and obviously long-term solutions some of us have been discussing for years. This schematic will give you a little bit of an understanding of the pathway and what is feasible or not. The complexity within the cruise industry is that vessels currently built and on order shall have a service life beyond 2050. And as the industry transitions between now and 2050, it will not be feasible to switch all vessels to low-carbon fuels before 2050. So a sensible transition shall target vessels that have a maximum return of investment time, balancing conversion costs and penalties against carbon-based fuels. For a successful transition, a pathway should be adopted, and it is by the Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package adopted by the Commission, and one that is appropriate from a safe, sustainable, and technical point of view. Obviously, as you can see, the timeline on the pathway depends on the availability of fuel as well as technical maturity. So some of those solutions have been categorized as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1 meaning easy, 2 meaning feasible, 3 meaning neutral, 4 being uncertain, and 5 non-feasible. So just to give you an idea, the transition from the traditional fuels to ammonia is a very difficult thing, and it might not be achieved in time, but there are solutions like biofuels, LNG, liquid biomethane, that can actually lead to synthetic fuels much quicker than anticipated. So diving a little bit deeper into those, shoreside electricity is one that we've been talking a lot. We all know the benefits of that by now. The points I would like to focus is that there are 1,300 ports around the world where cruise ships call, and only 28 of them are actually equipped with shore power. So it is a great effort that needs to happen from world ports. Whilst currently 40% of the clear capacity is equipped with shore power connections, and it will go up to 75% by 2028. So schematically, the ships are ready, the ports are lagging behind, and this is what we need to accelerate, but not everywhere. Not every solution makes sense in every port. The second part is liquefied natural gas. It's something we've been talking a lot about. Yes, it's a fossil fuel for the time being, but it is the pathway. So the LNG is actually a transitional fuel that reduces the emissions. You can see almost zero SOx, 80% of NOx, 100% of particulate matter that is harmful for the lungs if inhaled. But it is also a fuel in itself in transition. So ships which are ready to sail with LNG, and we have plenty of those, you will see later on, they can actually very easily convert to synthetic LNG or eLNG in the near future. So we accept still fossil fuel, but with a view to the future changes. The only fuel that is readily available right now, but not at scale, is actually biofuel. So here it explains first, second, and third generation. Obviously, the first generation is something we live in the past. The EU rules under the Renewable Energy Directive are focusing on second generation and third generation. And the good thing is that those are, in the last bullet point, drop-in fuels. So they're ready to be used right now. So we have ships that did trials in Rotterdam with biofuels, and they did sails. Last week, another member announced that they are trying this on 3 or 4 of their vessels. It's obviously the scale of the availability that kind of stops a bigger number of vessels of using biofuels. Now, looking a bit where we stand with all this information in mind, there are currently 11 LNG-powered ships in the CLIA fleet, and 23 more are coming. 78% is equipped with advanced wastewater treatment systems, so that different types of water on board. You've got black water, you've got grey water, you've got wash water from exhaust gas cleaning systems, and all of that is being treated before being discharged. And I have to note here that that type of water and any type of water is never discharged in port. So it all happens 12 nautical miles in the majority of the jurisdictions beyond territorial waters, and there has to be a speed of 6 knots in order to discharge even treated water. So we are taking this in a very strict approach. Now, looking into the future, by 2028, there will be 38 cruise ships powered by liquefied natural gas. There will be 171 cruise ships equipped with exhaust gas cleaning systems. So for those that still have to use some kind of traditional fuel, they will have exhaust gas cleaning systems, and we will see how those work. 85% of cruise ships, so 73% of global capacity, depends how you measure it with the number of vessels or the number of lower berths, cabins, beds, will be equipped to connect with shore-side electricity, and obviously 235 cruise vessels, so 77% of global capacity, will have the advanced wastewater treatment systems. But there are also long-term solutions, and I know I shouldn't be keeping you here for long. Just very quickly, methanol is one that actually our members are looking at, and there are several trials underway. So there are safety characteristics which do not provide major hurdles. Obviously, there are different types of methanol being developed. What is important is that it's, as it says, compared to fuel oil, 2.4 times as much methanol in volume is required, which means that ships need to be retrofitted and change the type of tanks and the size of tanks. So it takes a little bit of work, but it's a viable solution. Hydrogen, LNG, as we said before, fossil fuel for the time being, but it can be blended with hydrogen, and those solutions are being looked at. So there are some considerable design changes that need to take place, but it is a feasible solution, absolutely. Again, the volume is for storage on board is actually what is required. Ammonia, it is a solution that is being looked at for the maritime sector, but as it highlights here, it is a highly toxic gas. So its application on cruise ships is questionable for the time being. I'm not sure where the technology will land, but that actually gives me a point that for handling all these fuels with the different temperatures, the different pressures that were used at, crew members on board, but also port workers need to be educated, need to be trained. Port infrastructure needs to change. It is not as simple anymore as installing a tank for diesel oil and just fueling the ship. It is much more complicated. So as we talk about biofuels, as you mentioned, Your Excellency, we actually need to look into infrastructure developments as well. And then fuel cell technology is something definitely our members are looking at, and there have been already trials underway, and it could be a good solution because it can use a variety of fuels. So methanol, ethanol, natural gas, biogas can be used in fuel cells. The last point I want to make is that batteries and wind technology are also being explored. We already have hybrid cruise ships which have batteries on board, but those can only be in the case of ships' auxiliary power solutions. So they can support for a little while, maybe when the ship is at berth, but those are not the primary source of energy. And the rule of thumb here, something probably in Azores you're very familiar with, is the Atlantic crossing. So a ship, either cargo or passenger, needs to have, the fuel is good if the ship can actually cross the Atlantic without need of refueling, and that's the rule of thumb there. Maybe our cars, which are electric, we can afford to stop on the road and charge them again. But when it comes to planes, when it comes to ships, that's not advisable, I would say. A couple of more slides I have just on the timeline and actually on the communication we do around that. So keeping the timing a bit realistic. I think I missed a slide here. Just let me go back. Yeah, okay. So keeping the timing a bit realistic. You see that in 2008, ships were being built with to burn heavy fuel oil without what we call a scrubber, so an exhaust gas cleaning system. In 2014, it was actually the cruise industry that introduced in the maritime world what we call scrubbers, so the exhaust gas cleaning systems. And then the technology migrated to other forms of shipping. And it is obviously that they reduce nitro oxides, sulfur oxides in particular matter to a great degree. Then LNG came, which has still, as a fossil fuel, it has a lot of benefits when it comes to our emissions. In 2023, LNG fuel cells and batteries are being explored, which reduce even further those harmful emissions. And there is already for 2030, which is not that far away, the climate neutral ship with temporary zero emissions. And this is coming from the Mayer Group, which is one of the three main shipyards in Europe that manufacture cruise ships. If I would also give you an idea about the broader timeline, you have to know that the first ship that was able to connect to shore-side electricity was delivered in 1997 and made the first connection in 2001, long before my good friends in Brussels, where I'm based, woke up and decided that shore-side electricity is a good solution. The cruise industry was actually there 30 years ago. The actual technology about exhaust gas cleaning systems, it actually started being developed in 2007, so pretty much in good time. And LNG around 2013, it was operational, so 10 years ago. And that's where my belief in this industry comes from. In terms of communication and information, this is something I would like to invite you all to visit, is the Cruise Info Hub. We actually created this not as a website, but as an interactive tool where you can see all the technologies that are being deployed on board ships to reduce the impact on air, to reduce the impact on sea, and to reduce the impact, sailing at sea, and reduce the impact on destinations. So the second part of this is that we have examples of best practices, of good practices for sustainable cruise tourism in the destinations that are partnering with us. And I'm really happy that, when we started this exercise, we didn't know how many we will get, but we actually got hundreds of those, and we had to combine some of them or scrutinize some others. It's a really useful tool. Information is been uploaded all the time, and it will help you more with downloaded data and any kind of information you might need. So I think I've said enough. I would like to thank you very much for having me here, and I wish you very good deliberation in this very interesting conference. Thank you.
At the end of this presentation, integrating renewable energy resources into cruise operations, we have now 5 minutes for questions from the audience. If you make a sign, we will send a portable microphone to you. Temos 5 minutos para questões que a plateia entenda colocar ao representante da CLIA. Basta que façam sinal que fazemos chegar um microfone para alguma questão que queiram colocar, por favor.
No?
Any question from the audience? Okay, one question.
Just be careful.
Ultra-peripheral areas in order to best achieve CLIA's goals. We have special defiances, of course. We have special infrastructure that needs to be taken care of. And as you know, as we're dealing with, an increase of added value because of the COVID, and after COVID, the opportunities that came to us with cruisers, and of course with the partnership with CLIA, how can we be less ultra-periphericals and more close to your goals, if that's possible, and how do you see us as an advantage to CLIA in your organization? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Starting with the cruise business model. So the cruise business model back in the 50s, and it stayed the same, was to bring passengers to explore destinations. And I have slides in other presentations with information which shows that 6 out of 10 cruisers return to the destination for land-based holidays. They confirmed that themselves. That the average cruiser spends something like $760 on a week-long cruise out of their pocket, plus all the shore excursions they actually buy. And for that to happen, we need the destinations to remain to be protected and to remain pristine, and we need the people in the destinations, the communities, to be happy to receive cruise guests. Otherwise, the model doesn't work. So cruise lines have, for many, many years, since the 80s, since the 90s, programs about protecting the destinations their visit. The Save the Seas programs, the Save the Destinations, and so on, have been going on since that time. So it is of paramount importance that we are protecting the destination where we visit, and this is why all this technological innovation is taking place. Nobody wants to, destroy a destination and then bring passengers there. That doesn't simply work. The other part of it is that the EU has a very succinct strategy, which we totally support and we totally agree with, which is the zero emissions at berth. So whatever the technology does to actually help the ship sail in a sustainable way with as less emissions as possible, zero emissions at berth is actually the goal we are chasing here. And that can be achieved in various ways. So obviously, shore-side electricity is one of them, but it cannot apply in all destinations. Even the EU has recognized that. They're putting the obligation on 10T ports. So ports found themselves on the trans-European network corridors, and not every port in the world. But then it's up to cruise lines to invent ways where they could have zero emissions at berth. And then biofuels that are available now, fuel cells, batteries, and all those technologies come into place. And the third part is what you talk about. You spoke about the peripheral destinations. In the cruise business, there are no peripheral destinations. I mean, even with the transatlantic crossings, the Azores is actually at the center of a transatlantic crossing that happens twice a year when this whole fleet moves from Europe and the Middle East to the Caribbean and Alaska, and then vice versa for the next season. So there are no peripheral destinations in that sense. But if we look at Europe and if we want to consider places like Azores and Madeira and the Canary Islands as peripheral destinations, then the goal for me is to actually integrate them into a region. Reduce the dependency on transatlantic calls or north to south calls, and actually consolidate the region into a region where cruise lines will actually put cruise ships to run around those islands. And obviously, because of the distances, there will be many sea days, so you won't have a ship every day at the port, or every week the same ship on the same day. It will vary, but it will actually have a sustainable visitation throughout the week. And I'm happy that there is a partnership going on, as far as I understand, with the Atlantic European islands, and I hope that this delivers some fruit in the near future. So, thanks so much.
And after a question from the President of the Board of Portos dos Açores, we have one more question from Portos dos Açores, Ricardo Batista.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I wonder whether it would be worth considering Azores as a supply point for ammonia or hydrogen for cruise ships or another kind of ships, in your perspective.
Can you repeat the question, because I didn't hear?
Is it worth to considering the Azores as a supply point for ammonia or hydrogen for cruise ships?
Yeah. This is a question we definitely get a lot. So nobody knows where the technology will end up. I mean, what are we going to use in the future? So making investments now is a little bit tricky. I think there needs to be constant communication and dialogue with the cruise lines and with the wider maritime sector, because yes, cruise lines are on trial on all these things, but actually, if a solution is found that 70,000 ships in the cargo business are going to follow, then cruise doesn't have much of a choice there, or won't have much of a choice there. So it has to be a constant dialogue. We know as far as we know so far, but obviously with the partnership between shipyards, and the good thing is that shipyards are in Europe, so you can actually meet them very often with the shipyards, with the cruise lines, and with the ports. When there is a solution that seems to be taking place, like LNG was in 2013, then everybody will immediately know and will be able to start investing. So it's a process that we try to, we try to nourish, and we try to keep the dialogue live. That's why I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your interest, and thank you so much for listening to me. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Nikolaos Mertsanidis. In the continuation of this seminar, we will have now a presentation with the title Challenge for Providing Sustainable Shore Power in Ships in Islands by Filipe Mineiro. Filipe Alexandre Marques Mineiro is graduated in electronic engineering. He has participated in several projects and the commissioning of power plants and ships propulsion systems worldwide, currently working as product sales manager for Wärtsilä Ibérica. Wärtsilä is a global leader in innovative technologies and life cycle solutions for the marine and energy markets. Filipe Mineiro.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for inviting me for this seminar. For me, it's always a pleasure to come here, and especially to the islands. Azores is indeed one of my favorite places in the world. So the title that they asked me to describe here, it's about the challenges for providing sustainable shore power and energy to the ships, especially in islands. Because there are some particularities when we considered that this is a microgrid. So I'm going to summarize a little bit what we are going to speak about. Who is Wärtsilä? Wärtsilä is coming actually from the side of the industry. We are developing new technologies, new engines to work as we were previously hearing, with new fuels. We have a strong focus on hybridization and electrification on ships. But as you can see, we are over in 200 locations. We are more than 19,000 professionals. And this is a company that was already established in 1834. So we are almost close to 200 years of existence. We specialize in two segments. One is the energy, and another one is the marine, because we have plenty of synergies, both between power plants and also the marine side. And you can see that we have quite a big installed capacity in all 5 countries of the world. And this is distributed between utilities, industrial processes, or municipalities, like, for example, district heating. At the same time, we are betting a lot on energy storage systems. Nowadays, this is also crucial to help to optimize and not only optimize, but also allow to introduce more renewable energy into the grid. Because there are limitations, and we can speak a little bit later on about the different scenarios. throughout the use of the energy storage systems, we can actually have a much better efficiency in terms of the power plants, but at the same time increase the renewable energies. In the marine segment, we have a strong focus on carbon neutral fuels, so biosynthetic fuels, ammonia, methanol, hydrogen. We are testing all of these different fuels. And note that LNG is no longer here, because this is already a proven technology. We have been producing our engines more than 30 years ago using pure LNG. We are able to do retrofits, and we have quite a big installed base, not only on cruise ships, but other kinds of ship segments using it. So we are now betting a lot on this new kind of fuels, but we are also taking quite a step forward in electrification. On one side, indeed, we have the shore connection that we will speak a little bit more in depth here, but we also are betting a lot on pure electric or hybrid solutions. Because on one side, okay, if it's pure electrical, it's purely based on batteries, but hybrid, using the batteries, it can allow us to run more efficiently the engines. And in the end, the batteries are like a Swiss Army knife. They allow us to do different things. So we can optimize the engines. We can, during a black start, we can use only the power of the batteries. We can enter and leave the ports just purely running on green energy. So there is a lot to do. It's not only a matter of like electrical cars take us from A to B. We can optimize the entire ship using the batteries. But okay, the thematic here is the onshore power supply. And what this is basically not only for cruise ships, but the idea is to take this broader to the all other segments. It's to, when you get to a ship, you can switch off your engines, and this on one side can cut all the harmful emissions. We also take out all the visible smoke and noise pollution, because as we know, especially those who live around the ports, this also has quite a big impact on the city surroundings. What are let's say, the challenges here? The ports have to be flexible to allow to take on different frequencies and voltages, because every ship is a little bit different from the others. So one can have the need to receive 11.1 kVs, the other one needs 6.6 kVs. We know that here in Europe we use the 50 Hertz from our electrical grid, but many ships have 60 Hertz. So we actually have to transform from 50 to 60 onshore, and then we pass that frequency to the ship. And there is already standardized connection types, and there is the IAC 80005 that actually defines how this should be for each kind of ship. So the cruise ships have a special requirement, especially because the power they take. Other ones are about safety. Other ones are about interconnection. So this is already more or less defined on the standards that it should use. And this is basically what we are doing here. So we are taking, when the ship is arriving, we are taking the power from the shore. We are connecting all the cables. And then, okay, it's not as simple as we just plug in, let's say, our toaster at home. We have to align the different voltages, the frequency. We have to make sure everything is okay. And then, indeed, when there is no problem, we can actually connect and then slowly reduce the load on the engines and be purely connected to the shore side. So this is roughly the idea. And yes, we may need to take different voltages, like I'm saying here, and we have to take in consideration which frequency we are using. And then when we want to go out, we do the other step. We start again our engines, we synchronize with the grid, then we slowly go up with the loads on the engines until the end we open the breaker and then the ship can go out again. So this is more or less the basic concept. Of course, there are other issues behind. There is a strong focus on safety, because you can imagine that is a high voltage cable passing through with 11 kVs with a lot of amps. So everything is studied in case of some emergency is coming, opening, so no one gets hurt. I'm not going to try to go too much technical on this, but the power demand that some ships can have is actually quite huge. Not all, because, okay, let's face it, the smaller ships, especially for example container ships that are coming into this island, they are relatively small, but we still have to consider them. And we are studying, and most of them will be actually in low voltage. But the standard defines for high voltage that, for example, ro-ro ships can take up to 6.5 MVAs, which is a lot. Cruise ships can go up to 20 MVAs. That is what the standard is requiring for especially for the bigger cruises that are showing up. Containers, 7.5 MVAs. So, but this is already for the 300-meter container, especially for the fridges that they carry, because there is a lot of power consumption there. LNG carriers, 10.7 MVAs, and tankers up to 3.6 MVAs. So the scale of the power that we are talking about, it's huge. It's not like a refrigerator at home. This is huge amount of power, and what normally is not a problem, let's say, or it is still a problem, obviously, in Europe or US or other countries, in Iceland is a particular challenge. And we will focus a little bit on that. So what are the challenges, indeed, that we are looking in the islands? Well, first, if we compare it with an infinite grid, and by infinite, I mean, for example, taking a look at the interconnectable grid between Europe, we see that all countries are actually producing their own energy, obviously, but they are also sharing the electricity through the high voltage lines. And we are sharing terabytes terawatts of energy. So it's kind of infinite grid. Whatever you put, if you put 100 MVAs on a ship, it's not possible, but if you could put, no one would really notice, because the power is there and it's being produced and it's being shared. And it's quite easy to go up or down. The problem is, for example, here, where we are each island is independent and it's a producer, and they do not share electricity. It would be good. I bet the guys, our colleagues from EDA would be really happy with it if it would be technically feasible and cheap, but it's not. So each island is producing its own energy, and there are limitations, because you cannot have 500 megawatts installed producing power on an island. It would not make sense. The power installed is growing according to what the island needs. And the islands were not ready to take this kind of powers. And this is actually challenge number one, which is the infrastructure limitations. Because upgrading existing infrastructure to support the shore power can be costly and time-consuming, because they have to readapt and upgrade all the electrical systems, transformers, distribution networks, berthing facilities at the port, because some equipment has to be put in, some connections, connection to the port control center to be able to measure and provide the energy. So from the producer, which in this case is EDA, through the distribution, which is, okay, it's also EDA in this particular case, everything has to be upgraded, because we cannot expect the port to have 20 MVAs available. And actually, this is common to all ports. So I was showing the map of Europe, and all ports have this kind of difficulty. It's just on islands, the problem is magnified, because this was developed to have basic services, and if we want now for one of our friends, the cruise ship, to come, we have to really adapt and make huge investments on the grid. Another one is indeed the power generation capacity. And I've collected some numbers here. They are public. They are on the website of EDA. And we can see more or less the installed power throughout the islands. And at the same time, we can see what is the consumption and where the energy is coming in different times of the year. Because in different times, you have different profiles of load, of the diagram of the charge that we are consuming. And this depends on the tourism, on the weather, on a number of factors. And indeed, as you can see, some islands just don't have the full installed power to take in some of these bigger ships. And we have to take in consideration that, for example, even here in San Miguel, even if we say that we have 142 megawatts of power installed, it needs to have a reserve, because you may need to do maintenance on some power plants, on some engines. So not all of this power may be available at all time. And this is something that also has to be considered when doing these studies for the islands. There is also the challenge of the energy quality and the resilience of the electrical system. Because, again, we are not in Europe, we are in Europe, yes, but we are not in the mainland. So, because everybody is a producer, we have to take special care, for example, about the frequency. And the frequency, you know, these 50 hertz that we hear about, it's really important to the quality of the grid. If we go out of this 50 hertz and if we go a little bit up or down, we may need to take some special measurements, like cut some part of the island, or actually we can have a blackout on the entire island and we have no more energy. So, and this is regulated by the load and how much load it can take. And what happens is, for example, a load immediately gets out of the grid. So there might be variations, and we have to keep this in a very stable manner. The other one is the inertia of a system, and the inertia is coming from the generators. So I think you all have seen images of a turbine or a hydroelectric plant where it's rotating a very big mass, and this very big mass allows to keep the grid very stable. So every load change, because the inertia is the intent of an object moving to keep moving, when we try to accelerate or decelerate, it will provide us this help to keep the 50 hertz stable. And when we put in more load, or actually, and this is a little bit in parallel, when we try to put more renewable energies that don't really have this possibility to support in the inertia of the grid, we are weakening the grid itself. So we have to take this also in consideration. So yeah, both the frequency and the inertia, they are critical, because the more load and the more renewables we try to put in without having some kind of extra support, they can lead us to situations where we have to unload part of the island, or it can actually lead to a blackout. Then it's the matter of the logistics. And because of all of these challenges, there has to be a quite effective communication between port authorities, ship operators, and power providers. If we have such a big ship coming in, for sure the island at that moment is not ready to take in the extra power. So what we have to do, when the ship is coming, the port operators have to tell the dispatch center of the island, hey, I have a ship that normally will require extra 11 MVAs. Are you prepared to provide this energy? Yes, no, and how? And only after all of this communication, and it is allowed, then yes, we can provide the energy. So there has to be a completely different cooperation between all of these entities. And then we have to engage actually all stakeholders. This includes all government agencies, shipping companies, and environmental organizations. And I will probably focus here a little bit on the shipping companies, because, for example, here you cannot just decide, yeah, I want to make short connection, without speaking with the regular container vessels companies that are coming here, because you have to adapt with them, so that whatever you are doing in port and whatever power, at what frequency you are placing in the port, the shipping companies are able to accommodate and to connect. Otherwise, you are, let's say, doing it on yourself, but then the owner will not have the chance to comply. And last, we have the environmental impact. So, the idea of providing the short connection is indeed to cut all the harmful emissions that are being produced on board, especially. But when we do this, when we supply it with our own energy, we have to try to move in a path that we are not just transmitting, or we are not taking the pollution from the port and putting it on a power plant a little bit upstream. So the idea has to be to indeed allow for more renewable penetration on the islands, so that we can indeed provide the ships with clean energy. And we see that, for example, at this moment, still a big percentage of the powers of the islands are being produced using generators with a high carbon footprint. And this we have to try to reduce, otherwise we are just shifting the harmful emissions from the port to another place. I'm going to run here some sceneries just to have an idea. This is quite basic, so forgive me, the guys of EDA, for showing such a basic system, but it is actually just to have an idea of the interactions that have to be done and what has to be a little bit taken into account when doing the short connection. So typically we have a power plant with 4 different engines producing electricity. Some are connected to the grid or not. So we are indeed providing power to the grid. And this is supplying a load. That supplies the industry, offices, our homes, data centers, whatever. So this is pretty much how it works. Now let's run a few scenarios. Imagine that, and this is what we are trying to achieve, we have the load of the city, let's say 30 megawatts. This is not really the example of this island, it's just an exercise. We have, for example, 30 megawatts, and we have the renewable energies helping us, which is good, obviously. The bad thing about the renewable energies is that they are not able to follow the load. They just give you the load, and you have to take it. Someone else, in this case, are the engines or different sources of producers that indeed have this capability that will absorb or give more power to the current needs of the load. So if you look at that, we have 10, 17, 22, plus 8, we have the 30 megawatts. So this is perfectly okay, and we would think that normally this would run like this. Well, the problem is, let's imagine that there is a problem in the substation of this windmill park, and now these 10 megawatts that were being produced there disappear. These 10 megawatts are then transferred to the engine. What is the problem? I don't know if you can see, but this particular engine has a capacity of up to 15 megawatts. It cannot give more than 15 megawatts. So what will happen? It will go out of the grid, and then the island goes dark. So we cannot do it like this. Let's try to do it some other way. Okay, I will start the second engine, but this time I will divide the load by the two engines, so that let's see if this is more feasible. So if now I cut again this substation and all of these 10 megawatts, I will get 9 megawatts on the engines. It's perfectly fine. So I think we can start from here. This seems to be a good spot. Great. Here we go. Now we are having our we are having two vessels. They will want to connect. That's perfect. They will connect with 5 megawatts each. We can see, I don't really know how to work with this one. It's not really working as well, but okay. Each vessel can have a power consumption of 0 to 10 megawatts. So we are being modest here, and I was giving them just a prediction of 5 megawatts. Everything seems okay. Each engine has 9 kilowatts. We are producing a lot of renewables, perfect. But the problem can also come from one of the engines. And now, for a safety reason, he had to shut down. What do you think it will happen? So these 9 megawatts that were being produced there, bloody hell, they are going again to the other engine and them. Again, we are out of electricity. So this doesn't work just like this. Just because we are powering 2 more vessels, we have to do something else. Let's try, let's see, again, the vessels are coming. I don't know what the hell happened with the other vessel. Here it is. Before they connect, let's turn on one more engine, just for fun. Let's see if this one works now. Yep, I managed to connect the 2 vessels, so I'm giving them power. All the engines have 6 megawatts. They are actually running at 35% load, so it's perfect. I don't see any problem coming this time. No, there is a problem coming. So actually, some clouds came in and all the renewable energies were affected. It's interesting because I don't know why the cloud is affecting the wind, but for this scenario it appears to be correct, so let's take it from here. So all of this energy that just disappeared from the renewables have to go somewhere. And they were shifted to the end. They were shifted to the engines, but now if we have a problem on one of the engines, this time I tried not to do a blackout, but notice the problem. We have the engines running at 15 megawatts, so they are at full power. And what is the problem here? If someone else at his home is turning on a lamp, or on the ships a pump is being connected, then we have again a blackout. So we are just really on the edge of suffering a blackout, and we don't want that. So the only way I see it is to use the full capacity of my power plant now to be sure that even with a little better weather, so without so many renewables helping us, I can have full resilience of the electrical grid. So actually I have to turn all of them on, which is also not good because I may want to do maintenance on one of the power plants or one of the engines. And now I don't have that possibility. Otherwise I will put in risk the complete electricity of the grid. So what can we do? a quick example because I'm running out of time. We can do something like what Varsila has implemented in the Ilha of Graciosa. You know this project probably even better than us. But by adding battery energy storage system to the island, it allowed us to reach up to 63% of penetration of the renewable energies. And actually the key figure here is that it was able to run 144 days at 100% renewable energies without the power plant. It was there just as a backup, but it was not necessary. We reduced working hours, we increased reliability of the grid, because if I could show you here a graph of the frequency, it would be perfect. And we also have all the savings in fuel and all the harmful emissions. So basically, what we try to do to optimize here, I can actually switch off one engine if I have a battery storage system, even under unfavorable conditions of the photovoltaic energies and the windmills. So this is more or less the concept that we have to try to achieve in order to really provide efficiently power to the vessels, but in a green way. Yeah, and this is basically what we want to try to achieve. Using all of the renewables, using new fuels to power the ships, hybridization, shore power, all of these concepts aligned to really indeed go to a carbon neutral future. That is the idea.
We are really out of time, so we are now going to have a coffee break behind the stage with entrance on the right side. Any questions to Felipe Mineiro, you can do it during the coffee break, please. Thank you. We will continue our thematic seminar with a presentation of challenges to supply ships from renewables on electric system operator perspective with Fernando Henriques from EDA, the electricity company for the Azores Islands. Fernando Henriques, electrical engineer, who has been making his career mainly in the EDA's planning department for electric generation, transmission and distribution systems. He is currently responsible for the innovation and technical planning department at EDA, as I told you before, the Azorean electricity utility. Within the scope of his activity, he carried out numerous studies on the evolution of networks and the expansion of electricity generation systems for all the islands of the Azores, collaborated with several national and international research projects, and monitored technical studies carried out by various entities. In the last 2 years, he has also become responsible for EDA's innovation area, in which Studies and projects are developed with a view to applying new technological solutions and through which EDA participates in various innovations projects financed by the European Union. Fernando José de Melo Henriques.
First of all, I want to thank for the invitation, for EDA invitation, you to participate in this event, even not being one of the partners and not knowing all the things that you know, not as much as you. So I'm going also to repeat some things that have already been said. The last presentation from Versilla have explained almost all the things that I had to bring here to you. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it very much. So I'm going to talk about the challenge to supply ships from renewables. I'm going to talk about renewables and also some challenges that have already been said to supply the ships from electric energy. So we are here at the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We are 9 small islands, 9 small independent electrical systems. There is no interconnection between them. We have about 236,000 inhabitants, and our electric power demand is about 823 gigawatt hours. Electricidade dos Açores, EDA, is the electrical utility that serves all the Azorian islands. We go from generation, transmission, distribution, and commercialization of electric energy in all the islands. And we also purchase electric energy from private energy producers. So in generation for the public services, this is thermal generation that is needed to grant the security of supply. And we also have a company in the group that also has the renewables installations. We are responsible for the modulation of energy production from all the installations, from ours and from private companies. And we also are responsible for all the necessary service to support the continuous flow of supply. And for these ancillary services, it is very important, and it has been for a long time very important, the diesel power plants. We don't like them. They use fossil fuels, they pollute, but they are needed in they are still needed in this kind of islands. So here is the 9 different isolated electrical system. We have the largest island is where we stand. This island represents this is the population. The demand is similar in the proportion, and you can see that 55.1% of the power, the electric power that is produced here in Azores is in these islands. If we add these islands to the second biggest Terceira island, we have about 80% of the total production. So with more 2 islands, we have 91%. So with the other 5, only represents about 9% of the electrical production. So the integration, it affects the integration of renewables. We want to integrate renewables in every island, but the biggest impact is these 2 bigger islands. I don't want to call them main islands, but bigger ones. We have in each island 1 diesel power plant that is needed to ensure all the services, to keep the energy quality and the security of supply. And then we have a lot of renewable plants. And these geothermal power plants are only in São Miguel, 2 in São Miguel and 1 in Terceira Island. So this is the electric generation in 2022. You can see that we achieved about 34% of renewable in 1 year. We can achieve more than that in 1 day or in 1 instant, but during a year, only 34% from renewable. Then we have here in these islands We have achieved 44% last year. We had a problem with geothermal. We can achieve about 50% of renewable in this island, mostly because of geothermal production that is stable and constant for all the year. And Terceira Island also has a geothermal power plant. It's newer than the other ones, but it also contributes a lot with a lot of energy. And then we have Graciosa Island that had a project, innovative project because of the hybrid system. You can see in these 4 islands, we have difficult to achieve more than 20%. In average, we achieve 15% of renewable because of the variability of the resources. And so we need to have thermal engines working when there is the renewable. And the amazing thing is when we have more renewable, we need more engines. And that's complicated, so there is a limit. And the problem is that we could have more than this if we had the potential, renewable potential, all year long as the geothermal resource. So one of the limitations is that we don't have the energy always there to use it. Here, this has the same conditions of that, but this has a difference because there was a project that was financed. And so this has a hybrid system. Varsila has already told about it, and Varsila was in that project. There was 2 things important in that project. One was the battery energy storage system. 3 things. One is to have big installation, much bigger than it would be feasible for anyone to invest. And the other thing is to have a huge battery energy system that can keep the stability when there is only renewable. And in this, it is challenging because the renewable is intermittent. It can vary in a moment, the wind speed or the photovoltaic, the radiation, solar radiation. And so, but even though they achieve, and also the third one was the energy management system that had to be very intelligent and to know what to do during all the year and to choose from which to connect and disconnect automatically the groups, diesel groups, and to store or discharge the battery in the right moments. And so with that, we could achieve 60% of renewable, which is a lot for isolated system with only intermittent renewable power, such as wind and solar. To achieve that 60%, we have already had about 1 week only with renewable, 100% renewable. It was amazing, even for the controls, the power plant personnel that were used to have 24/7 the diesel engines working. It's similar to all other islands, but from one day to another, they were shut down and they just work sometimes during the week. So then there is this island where we have achieved 50% because there is a very good resource of hydro in that island. And so we can get more because hydro also helps, like the thermal, to grant the supply, and also it doesn't change as much as the wind and the solar during the day. And so we can get already about 60%. Last year it was 50, but we can already achieve about 60%. So these are the goals that we have in Madeira Islands, the other islands from Portugal. They want to achieve about 50% in 2025. This was to be in 2022, but the investment took longer. And now they want also to achieve about 60% in 2030. Then Azores Islands, we want to achieve about 61%. And this 61% is with the investments from EDA. Any private investments, no, there is one investment that was considered also here, but most of the other investments from private companies is not considered, so we really want to achieve more than 61%. And we have a goal in 2030 to achieve 70%. It is in the Azorian Energy Strategy on Horizon 2030. Portugal is more ambitious as a whole, mainland and also islands. We don't contribute much here. We are very small part there, but they want to achieve. They want to achieve 69% in 2025, 80% 2030, and 100% in 2050. This is the investments that are ongoing. So to go from 2020 to 2026, we have a lot of investments in place that are being built, that are being done in our 9 islands. These are just to show some of them. There is no hydro installation, but there will be one in, more one. It will be added another one here in São Miguel and also in Flores Island. We can see here solar power plants, here wind farms, geothermal, and this energy storage system. It is needed, this is very important for these islands, because only with this energy storage system we can get more than that 50% to 20% of renewable in islands where we only have intermittent resources like solar and wind, and that's the most of the islands. So with all these investments, we want to achieve 56% of renewable plus 5% of waste to energy. This is the private contribution that I was talking that is also considered here and is important for the region. It's not renewable, but it's important also. This is what we want to achieve. So in 2026, as you can see, it is much easier to get higher numbers here. Here we have some difficulty because of the intermittent, the power is not always available there, wind and solar only during the day, and it changes during the day, even if there is clouds. So this is a big goal, this is 2026. About the similarity of Azores Islands and ships, I wanted to show you that even here, the electrification of Azores started with renewable energy, with hydro, and the ships initially were driven also with renewable energy, with the help of renewable energy, but it was wind. But then, similar for us and for the ships, we need to have more power and security of supply. And then there was a time, then we had to use engines that burn fossil fuels. So in ships, we had traditional these diesel engines that drives a shaft that then moves the ship propeller and also generates electricity. Currently, about 80% or more than 80%, they are now diesel electric transmission systems. So they have a diesel generator, but it produces electricity, and then the electricity does the movement. Okay, this is in this maritime, and so we were benefit with this development because we are nothing compared to maritime transport. So if something is done by the suppliers or that is developed by the supplier, is because of this need, not because of small islands. So what we have is that we have high reliability and efficiency index from diesel generators because they were improved and developed for the ships, okay? So we use the same technology as the ships. That's the only thing that I would like you to know. So you can see here how our thermal power plants are similar to an engine room in a ship. And most of thermal power plants are even smaller than many of the ships. So here is the conventional, where the motor drives directly the propulsion system. And here is the most of the one that there is. There is diesel electric propulsion system. I'm just showing this because our power plants, we don't have to do propulsion here in islands. They stay in the same place. So we use this only for electricity for our inboard load, okay? So our similarity is for this part, okay? But for a ship, this part is only 50% of the energy. So you have to be careful in looking the amount of energy that a ship needs and that we have here and which we have here in Iceland. I think I should this, I don't know with that. Can it be the presentation? Ok, no computador, sim. Desculpa, já vi. Não, ele está a tentar apresentar. Ele está a tentar apresentar no outro ecrã, que é aquele. Ok, já está apresentado. Agora é só fazer, talvez. Okay, thank you. So, these are the similarities. And so, in Iceland, we only use this 50%. If we put here a ship that needs 50% similar to the Iceland, if we were going to give more energy for the propulsion, it would add more 85%. It's a lot of energy that makes the ships move. So here is environmental health and why there is the need to have onshore supplies power. And so what's the problem is that when the maritime transport use conventional fossil fuels, they emit noise and produce exhaust gases when they stand at the port. So the European Commission wants that the onshore power supplies, that will be a solution to improve air quality in ports and coastal areas through this connection here. So in technology that there is already available for electric ships, we have the ones that I have told you that are currently that exist. Now there are the new ones with hybrid drive system, where there is some battery on the board in addition to the internal combustion engine. And these ships can sail even without the diesel engine, but just for a certain length of time. But the most important, and it is like a switch, army knife, the batteries, they help much more than this, than putting all running for a certain length of time. They help to turn more efficient the use of the diesel in the ships, and they reduce the emissions of all the ships, not only for making the engine, the ship running only by batteries, but helping the way the load is in the engines, in the diesel engines. Then there is the new fully electric drive system, where all the energy comes from the batteries. Currently, it is possible for ferries and inland vessels because they sail shorter and they dock frequently and can exchange batteries or briefly recharge the batteries. So the requirements almost was already said, but I'm going just to recapitulate. If we to take advantage of onshore power supply, we have to have a lot. We have to have a lot of renewables. So Sorry. So, one big goal is to have more renewable energy production. This renewable energy production can be onshore or can be near the harbor, also onshore or using ocean energy. And we need a reliable grid infrastructure that it was explained already, and I won't get to much technical details, but maybe a need to invest in all this high voltage supply in main station and even at this time in the power plants. And I will explain you later why. And then there is the conversion system to cope with different voltages and frequencies for the ships. And the charging system, and this part is for the port, that has to be designed to minimize voltage disturbance. The problem is not only frequency, but also with voltage. So this is numbers for the ships, for the inboard load, the hotel loads. This is the 15%, 15 to 20% of the load of the ship. And you can see here that an average power demand of a cruise ship would be 7.5 megawatts. It's a lot for an island like ours. You can see here São Miguel, the peak demand is, this is 77 megawatts, but in smaller islands, we have, you can see here, that in most of the islands, we don't have this 7.5. And even if we add, even in this island, we have to take into account, that was already explained, that we may have this peak demand and this diesel power plant installed, but this power plant installed that to be enough to feed all this need in the inland and also to have some margin because of failures for diesel maintenance or for diesel unit failures. So we don't have this power ready to use by ships. And so I'm going to show just an example, this island where we stand. We have here 2 geothermal power plants. These small ones, these 7, are hydro power plants, run off the river power plants. Then we have here a wind farm, biogas, and the thermal power plant. And we could achieve 44% renewable last year, mostly from geothermal. This is where we stand. This is Ponta Delgada, and we are right here. And you can see that there is some distance from this diesel power plant and more from the renewables. And another thing that is challenging is that the port, the harbor, is here in the city, and so the substations that feed the loads are around the city. If we want to get power from these substations here to the harbor, there is, you can see, only underground infrastructures. So if we want to increase, and if it's a big increase in the load here, we have a huge investment, and it takes a lot of time because we have to do infrastructures in the streets of a city street, and it can take years. So also, if the power is very high here, we also need to invest not only in these connections, but also in these substations. In the substations, we may need to put another transformer. And to put another transformer, we may have to expand the substation. To expand the substation, we have to have space. And that's all challenges. And all going up there from the transport lines, these are enough till now, this can handle, but then there is the diesel power station. And when we get to the diesel power station, we don't have enough energy amount from renewables that can cope, so we don't have a surplus from the renewables that can cope with these kind of values. to charge big ships or to supply big ships. So we may need another diesel generator and also a big investment. Then I want to show you, this is the 7 days load diagram. You can see here the weekend with less load, and these are weekdays. And so you can see here in these islands, we want to achieve, this is in 2026, all this geothermal amount. And you can see it is stable, and it is easy to get it to the grid. It has inertia, it has short circuit power, so it is a kind of renewable that doesn't take a lot of investment because they help also the system, not as much as thermal. So then there is the hydro, waste to energy, and you can see here wind and PV. So here is the rest of the need, and you can see that during the day we don't have as much power, renewable power, so we need this thermal. In the red is fossil fuel. We call it thermal, but it's fossil fuel. So, as you can see, during the day, we would need to invest a lot if new renewable, if we wanted to achieve 80% of renewable. And even investing and having a big, higher than this power capacity to produce energy from wind or solar, we will always have the problem. As you can see, this wind farm can produce this and more than this. If it can reach here, if the wind is good conditions, it could keep this value during all the time. And you can see there is many days where there is no wind. And even solar, you can see only during day, and if there is clouds, also there is not much solar. So if we put these ships here, and if we, for example, put a cruise ship here connecting in a harbor and be supplied by our electric system, what would happen is that they usually are here during the day time period, and during night they go. So this would increase here the need. That's not good. For us, the best will be to fill this part of the diagram, because we already can't put here more renewable. We could put more if this load would be put here. Here, we will need to have more diesel power. And you can say, but you can increase renewable. We can, but the share may not be higher than what we have. And so we will have the same pollution. So this is one thing that has to be studied, has to be analyzed, and have to be. So if we had a lot of, and that's very expensive, and the technology is not available for that much amount to storage capacity. If we had a lot of storage capacity, we could store here with wind, and then, or even in geothermal. You can see here that we had more geothermal that we can put in the system, and then we could use this energy to the ships. So all things have to be studied previously to take some decisions. The same for the rest of the islands. You can see the load diagrams are similar. Some have more industries, like this one, and this one. You can see there is more load here during the day than the others, here, and here. But they are quite similar. And another thing is that we have more load during summer. You can see here, and it is during the day. So during summer, during the day, the cruise ships will even get this worse. So we will have to expand our electric system and the diesel power plants. So another kind of charge or supply will be for fully electric RoPax ferry boats, similar to the ones we have, diesel boats here between these islands. And you can see if they are fully electric, we may need some battery storage systems, because you can see here the peak loads of these islands, the average load. This is what the system has been done to comply with this. And we have here the biggest diesel generator in the thermal power plant. So if you look here, a quick charge in 6 minutes requires 10 times the power than in 1 hour. So if we need, for example, 500 kilowatt charge in 6 minutes, we need 5 megawatts. 5 megawatt. 5 megawatt, you can see it's bigger than the biggest diesel generator. So we will have to connect 2 diesel generators, and we don't connect them for 6 minutes. It takes longer to connect. No, some of islands, these 2 islands, we can connect a diesel generator in 5 minutes to 15, but 5, okay. But in these that use heavy fuel oil, to start a diesel generator, it usually takes for 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And once it is being used, we won't disconnect it in 6 minutes. It has to be used around at least 1, 2 hours, 3 hours. We can be connecting and disconnecting diesel generators at a time, because it is a lot of wear and tear for the diesel generators. So it is possible, everything is possible. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying I'm just here to talk about the challenges, but everything is possible. It has to be have to be rightly studied before taking decisions. So one that could be done, and it is done in other places of the world, is to have a battery storage system. This battery storage system for the port would help not only to feed the energy, because it is very quick and it can have a big charging capacity and can be connected and disconnected instantaneously. And this battery storage system could also storage energy when there is a surplus of renewable. So we would use renewable to supply these kind of ships. And another thing is that battery energy storage system is also needed because of problems that were already told. Frequency regulation, because the very fast variations and quite high variations can give problems to the system and can make the system shut down, some diesel generators, because they are not as fast as intermittent variable energies like wind, solar, and even from discharge or discharge systems. So everything can be done, but you will need help of another storage system. So challenges. Challenges is all I've been saying. Charging infrastructure in the ports and suitable connections to the grid. As the private investors that want to build a solar power plant, they come here, they think, oh, this size, this value, solar panels cost this, inverters cost that, substation that, and it is viable. But that's not like that. There is a lot of people that comes here and thinks that that's the numbers, but that's not the numbers, because we are in small islands and there is more investments to integrate that facility and that amount of energy in here. So there has to be a grid connection, and the grid connection can be very expensive, okay? Similar to that, charging infrastructures also have to have suitable connections to the grid. And it can go to €1 million and many million euros in the investment, okay? Other thing, this plus the charging infrastructure that is being made at the port. And then there is the high power rapid charging capacity that we have thought for the electric ships that is very costly and hard to achieve. Then there is the renewable energy production capacity that we are going to do our investment. But anyone nowadays can do their own investments. There is self-production, and many entities are investing on that. You can see the airports now, it is installing about 1.2 megawatts of solar facility. So, and there is a lot of industries, the cement industry is thinking about putting 1 megawatt, milk about 850, and there is a lot of facilities between 100 and 450 till 500 kilowatts. So, because of the prices that went up in the last year, there is a lot of investments from entities to produce their own energy. And this can also be done by the port. So the renewable energy doesn't have to become all that energy from the power supplier. And also there is the variability and seasonability of renewable sources. Even for us and more for the private investor is that private investor usually invests in solar panels. It is a technology that is more affordable. But the problem is that the energy is only during a certain period of the day. And if a cloud passes, there is no much energy. So even then, they have to be connected to us, and we have to supply and to grant the energy supply. There is the variability of the onshore power supply demand. This is a problem that we have to study. How many vessels, what kind of charging they need, the time, the amount of energy, and the power. And also, maybe they needed batteries to store electricity, to introduce higher flexibility to the system in order to adjust consumption and production. And also there is another thing that I haven't told you, is the price differential between onshore and self-produced electricity. So diesels can produce electricity more cheaper than being bought from the utility. Maybe here it is not the problem, because we have the same price as in the mainland. It is lower than the cost of the production here in the islands. So if our cost of production is higher than the price that we sell the energy, maybe this is similar for the ships. They produce the production, their production would be higher than the energy that they could get from our grid. And so the required conditions. The most important is cooperation. I think it was already told. I'm just repeating things. So we have to work in group. Port Authority has to talk and to know the target shipping lines, the power, the voltage, the frequency, time, number of docks, and then the terminal operator, suppliers of automation technology, suppliers of electricity, that's us, and then environmental engineers and the local community. It's very important to work together because it is very challenging, this technology. Then it is needed technological evolution, technical standardization, so that every ship should use the same voltage level, same frequency, but it is difficult because countries have different. And favorable market conditions. At this time, it is, I don't know about this kind of infrastructure, but our infrastructure is much more expensive than 2 years ago because the suppliers don't have enough of what we need, and also because there is a lot of people wanting the same as batteries, as solar panels, and so the prices went very high. We have a storage system in Terra that started working in February or March this year, and we have another that is being built here. They are the hugest ones that we are building, but now for the new ones in the other islands, they are very small, and you can see from the consumptions, the difference is something like that. And even though the price of one island with a peak load of 5 megawatts, the price for a battery energy storage system for there is more expensive for 5 megawatt peak than for 30 megawatt peak in Terceira Island, the one that we have built. So the prices went high in the last years, not only for batteries, mostly for that, but even for other technology or other investments. So favorable market and also financial support that is very needed, especially when we have to invest. For us, when we have to invest in something that doesn't produce electricity, it only helps the grid, and it is difficult to say that it is needed and to prove that that money will be paid in the next years. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell you and to talk about, but many things have already been said and well said, so I had to repeat a lot of things. I don't know if there is time for questions.
We have 3 minutes for questions from the audience before moving on to the next presentation. Any questions?
One question from Berta.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the very realistic approach that you did. It's perfect. It's actually spot on. It's not as easy as people normally think that it is. Actually, it's not so much of a question. It's also more a comment, because when you said when you made the parallel with the ships and this path towards 100% green path in a carbon neutral fuel, if we do the parallel, it's not just about renewable energies, but if we also use renewable fuels in our thermal power plants, because you showed perfectly well that
yes.
The thermal power plants are needed, and they are doing the balancing. And if we are able to adapt these engines, or okay, in worst case scenario, we build new engines that can perhaps burn fuel or green ammonia, then we can still go into this path of 100% carbon-free future.
Okay, that's a really nice question. I wanted to talk about that, but I've forgotten that. I'm sorry, I'm here. I was invited to talk about challenges, not solutions, okay? So, and many of them you have already said. And one thing that I may say is that even if we achieve in one island about 65% of renewable, we only have 35% of thermal production, fossil fuel productions. That's not the same as saying that the thermal units will be used only during 35% of the year. So, I'm very fond of renewable. I'm from investments, EDA, and from the group. I want renewables. I'm always studying more renewables to increase the renewable production in the islands. But the problem is that the fossil fuel plants nowadays are very, very important because the renewables are not always there. So even in Graciosa Island, we had 65% of renewable during a year, but during, it's the same number, but it's different. It's during 65% of the time, the diesel generators were working. So people from Graciosa say, oh, we have 65% of renewable. We don't need, we shut down the diesel power plant. Diesel power plant is just a backup. No. Diesel power plant is always there and is needed the most of the time. Okay? And that's the reality and the problem that we have in all islands. Okay? And that question that you've put is that we still need thermal production. It may not come from fossil fuels, as we are using now. And one thing that we are still hoping, and it is similar to what I've said in the beginning, we have similar gensets as the maritime transport. And they are developing, always developing, not because of small islands, power plants, but because of the maritime transport. And everything that has been said in the first presentation can help us. So the last slides of the first presentation when they were talking about alternative fuels, we expect that they make it go further and they develop the machines and the fuels and the transport and the commercialization of that kind of fuels so that we can use in our power plants. Okay, so Wärtsilä is one of our, we have a lot of Wärtsilä engines, not only the energy management system in Graciosa Island, but also fossil fuel engines. And Wärtsilä is developing engines to use alternative hydrogen, methanol, biofuels, other kinds of ammonia. And so we are expecting that it develops because we still think that we will still need the diesel power plants, even if it is for 10% or 20% of thermal production. Maybe it is much easier to achieve 10% than to achieve 20, and it gets much difficult, and it requires much more investment to achieve 50, 60, and then when we achieve 80, it is quite impossible to achieve the 100%. 100%, and one thing that has been said by Wärtsilä, interconnected grids, big grids, they can use power surplus from one side to the other, and it's more easy for them to achieve 100%. Here, we have to produce it all locally, and it is very difficult to go from 90 or from 80 to 100. And for that percentages, we can say, oh, it's only 10, it's only 20. But we need that 10 and we need that 20 because they may be used more than 10% of the time of the year, and they will be needed many times when there is problems, as you have already mentioned, failures in the other production plants. And so, and the energy has to be reliable. And we have two things that worry us. One is to achieve more renewable, and the second, and that's why we are a public company, is the safety and the quality of supply. And so that kind of fuels, we are still looking at them, and we are thinking and doing a project in one diesel engine in one island in the next years to use one different fuel. But we are hoping that it develops a lot. I can say, and just last thing that I'm going to say is that the French islands, they are less far behind us in renewables, and they are going to invest a lot in biodiesel to get less emissions and decarbonization of their islands around the world. And there's a lot of investment there in the power plants to use alternative fuels. Okay.
Thank you. We have to move on to the next presentation. We are going to have now the contribution of Atlantico Line under the theme, Why Electric Chips Are the Future in the Azores, by Francisco Betancourt. Francisco Duarte da Silva Betancourt has graduation in Business Management by the University of Azores with specialization in financial and commercial areas. Also has post-graduation in Public Management and is for now Chairman of the Board of Directors in Atlantico Line, the public company for maritime passenger transport in the Azores Islands. Before, was internal audit and innovation director at Portos dos Açores and coordinator in E-Link project, also in GAIN project and also in Costa project. Francisco Betancourt from the public company Atlantico Line.
Good morning to everybody. I'd like to thank to Ports of Açores for the kind invitation. I'm happy to be here because I was in the beginning of the project in Ports of Açores. So for me, it's very, very good to see this event like this. Well, Ports of Açores was founded in 2005, and in 2015 it got merged with Transmaçor. That was the company in the three islands of the central group, Pico, Faial, and São Jorge. We have the headquarters in Horta, an office in Ponta Delgada, just by other side. And we have ticket office in Horta, Madalena, Velas, São Roque, and Ponta Delgada. Our fleet is constituted by 4 ships and 1 cabin motorboat, Ariel, that makes the transportation for passengers in Corfu and Flores. And we have the old, like we used to say, cruzeiros, Cruzeiros do Canal and Cruzeiros das Ilhas, that has 4 years, more than 4 years, and still working, and very good, may I say. And we have Gilberto Mariano and Mestre Feijó are the 2 rural type, one with 330 passengers and 15 vehicles, and the other one, Gilberto Mariano, with 296 passengers and 12 vehicles. First of all, they can take 12 and 15 vehicles, but because of the baggage from our passengers, the capacity reduced 1 or 2 vehicles per trip. This is what we have nowadays. Actually, Atlantic Line has 6 routes in Açores. The first one, blue, it's the one that transport more people. About 78 of every passenger goes by this route between Horta and Madalena. We have the green one between Horta, Faial, Pico, and São Jorge. In Pico can go to Madalena or São Roque. And we have the rose line that goes from Vila do Corvo to Santa Cruz das Flores. This is what we call the regular ones that work all year in Açores. In the seasonal, like June, July, August, and September, we have 3 more routes. One purple that goes from Horta, Pico, São Jorge, and Terceira Islands. And the white one that goes the same islands but go through Graciosa Islands, and it goes around São Jorge to Graciosa and then to Terceira Islands also. In last year, we started a new route between Velas and São Roque, between the canal São Jorge and the channel São Jorge and Pico, that we still think it's very important to dynamize what we call the triangle, the 3 islands, Faial, Pico, and São Jorge. This is some figures that we have. Last year, we transported 566 passengers in 2022, like I said, and 31,794 vehicles in our routes. This is what we have in the central group. You can see by the colors. By the colors of the blue is our shorter trip, about 4.5 miles. Then we have between Velas in São Jorge and São Roque in Pico, about 10 miles. Then you have Madalena to Velas. We always call the green one, And then we have the other ones I said, the purple, that goes from Horta, Madalena, Calheta, and then Praia de Vitória. Nowadays we are moving to Praia de Vitória because Angra Tourism is working in the port. And then we have the white one that goes all through São Jorge, goes around, goes to Graciosa, and then to Praia de Vitória. And this is very important for us because it's completely different to go in a 10-mile trip that goes about, takes about 50 minutes, then goes in 57 miles that goes, takes about 4 hours. It's completely different, and the people and the passengers are telling that to us. Many passengers nowadays, they used to send the car from Praia de Vitória to São Jorge. They send the car by the boat, and then they go by the plane flying to São Jorge, because they take 20 minutes and not 40 hours in a trip. And that's something that we have to realize and have. Beside of that, we have the price, because in 2021, the prices were down or cut about 50%. So the price is completely different nowadays to go from one island to another one. It then takes a big challenge for us in the maritime transport of passengers. So we have, like I said, the maritime transport by passenger and vehicles between Paial, Pico, and São Jorge Islands. And in the summer, we have the transport between these islands and Graciosa and Terceira Islands in the months of June, July, August, and September, like I said before. In the Western group, we only have the transport of passengers. We have a motorboat, like I said, with 12 passengers that does the transport every year, all over the year, in 13 miles. And in the Eastern group, where we are, we don't have nowadays the transport between the two islands, and it means it's 57 miles to go from São Miguel to Filo do Porto, or Ponta Delgada to Filo do Porto. And it takes, in the speed that our boats, our ships used to travel, about 40 hours. That's completely different, like I used to say. Well, we're here to talk about the future and why ships electric ships are important for us. And I said this because of the distance, because for us it makes all the difference about the future and about what we're trying to do in our fleet. First of all, the decarbonization. That's something that we all have to work, and Açores always had, and Henrique said, we have the fast hydric power plant in Portugal many, many years ago. So Açores always had a big investment in the decarbonization. We want to have an increased number of trips between Faial, Pico, and São Jorge, because that's the islands, the more where the distance are lower, are shorter in Açores. And of course, take the advantage of the proximity between that islands and reduce the dependency of Açores from abroad. If we have electric, and with all the challenges that have been told here, I think we'll get there. Well, this is the first time we present this. This should be something like this, not exactly this, but something like this. One of the ships that we're gonna build, and we hope that in 2025 it will be here, not here, but here in the Açores, but not here in this island, but in the central group. And we justified that because of what I talked before. We have 5 miles, 4.5 miles, and 10 miles in between Faial and Pico and between São Jorge and Pico. So that's where we can work with electric. Like everybody said, it's a long, short distance. We can do it with electric chips, not more than that. Nowadays we have autonomy for that, and we wanna take advantage of that and use this type of ships in that kind of trips. So we're planning for Faial and Pico because it's the most, where we have the most of the passengers that we transport. A ship about 35 meters, capacity for 250 passengers and then vehicles. And we're gonna do it between Faial and Pico. In the other channel, between São Jorge and Faial, we pretend to have a 30 meters ship with capacity of 150 passengers and 6 vehicles. We try to adjust our offer to the demand that we know that happens nowadays in that islands, in between São Jorge and Pico Islands. This is, in a rude way, what we're trying to do there. Nowadays, and that's important for us, we have autonomy for this transportation between Pico Faial and São Jorge Faial, São Jorge Pico. And that's what we're trying to do and what we can do in this moment. We have many challenges. Some of them was already said here, but we need electricity to charge station in Ports. In a few days, we'll go to join with Portos Açores and talk with EDA. We just finalizing the specification that we need to talk with them, like Fernand said. If we're gonna charge in few minutes, we need much more power for that. And that's a big challenge because we have in Faial and in São Jorge, we can have, because we have the ships there and they can charge in a slow mode. But if we want to charge for something event or something that happens, we need to charge in Pico. We need to do it fast. So the kind of power is required is much more, like Enrique said, and very well. We have the specificity of the marine transportation in Açores. We are in the Atlantic. It's all much more different than in a river. I was with Transtej in the mainland with the board of directors, and they have 10 ships with batteries. They will arrive. And it's many different, or it's much, much more different to travel in the river than in the Atlantic Ocean. Our workers, the head of the ships, usually tell us that we usually need power when we're in the port, because the weather sometimes is not helping, and we need to work with the machines in the port. So every day use the power, then we're gonna need it. We have an annual preventive maintenance that is made, and usually we have to take our ships to the mainland to do the preventive maintenance. So if the autonomy is just for the channel between Pico and Faial and São Jorge and Pico, it creates us a problem that if we don't have the armor in Pico, I hope Tecnovia develops really well there, so we can do the work there. It's a challenge for us. And of course, we are working in a compromise between autonomy and speed. If you go to the monohull ship, that's better for Açores because of the weather, of the climate, the conditions, but the velocity will be, or the speed will be lower. If you go to a catamaran, we can go more speed, we can get more speed, but the weather conditions can impossibilitate that we can do the trip. So we are trying now to work in a compromise between these two, autonomy and speed. We'll get there. This is our contacts for anything that we need. We have a channel with business contact. We have a contact center that works all year and all day between 8 o'clock and 10 p.m. So everything that we can do, we are available for that. And thank you. I don't know if you have some questions.
We will have 5 minutes for questions. Any question?
Everything is said.
Okay. Thank you. Due the delay, we will transfer the next presentation to the afternoon with a slight delay for the resumption of work to 2:30 p.m. Meanwhile, we will take a break for lunch, which will bring together the speakers of these 2 days and the members of the Portos project present here. Thank you for coming this morning, and we hope to see you again this afternoon, as well as who followed us via YouTube. Thank you.